Hello, it's the Degenerate. I'm doing a live recording for my best bet in college football week 2. It's funny, I've actually never done one of these before. I usually do the live streams, which comes a bit more natural for some reason, like just recording live and doing this all in one take has me a little bit more nervous and uneasy. I'm probably going to say a few incorrect things and stumble a little bit, but we'll just push through it. So, college football week 2, I have had a very slow start to the season. I don't necessarily mean with wins or losses. I mean just in terms of volume. I'm not really, I guess you could say, that educated with any of these teams and players now that we've got the transfer portal. Back in my day, I'm 37 years old, but when you used to follow and watch a college football team, you could kind of get familiar with some of the younger players, the freshmen and sophomores that you knew were going to be there, junior, senior year, whatever. And if you liked what you saw from them, you could lean into it the following year. But players are leaving; they're going all over the places, and the NIL doesn't really have a huge impact, in my opinion, in terms of capping, at least for me personally. But just getting familiar with the players and the teams, I like to have a little bit more of a sample size, so I don't really go too heavy in week 0 and week 1. Unfortunately, we did a little bit last year in the newsletter, and surprise, surprise, we got our ass kicked. So, anyways, nice and slow on our newsletter, which you can subscribe to on the website, thedegenerateweekly.com. It is free. There's an option to pay. Some people do and support our work. It's very kind of you. We really appreciate it. But we went 2-1 last weekend. We double dipped in the Notre Dame game. Stake liked Notre Dame. I liked the under. Those went 2-0. And then, unfortunately, which is actually going to segue into my best bet this week, I failed on my first 2-unit play with Michigan State minus 11.5. I got great CLV at home against FAU. I'll tell you a little bit about why I like that game, and it's going to kind of lean into my best bet. I'm going to do my best not to call it a POD. My best bet going into week 2. I faded the Florida Atlantic Owls. And I did so because, first of all, it just sounds like a weird thing. A South Florida school going into East Lansing, Michigan, and playing football is just it's just a weird visual. It's a weird matchup. Tom Herman is the coach at FAU. He's not really a coach that I think I or many people respect anymore. But he's kind of at a school now that I think might be a good fit for him. If you remember, he had a good, I believe, 2 years at Houston. He went to Texas. They signed him to a big contract, and he didn't do too hot. I think he took a year off, and now he is at FAU, which, again, kind of a good refresher, good starting point for guys that are getting back into it. The example I would use is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is doing very well. Although I think Lane Kiffin might have what it takes long term to be a successful college football coach. Tom Herman, I'm not really so sure. Anyways, went into this game thinking, I don't want to lay double digits with Michigan State, but at the same time, I don't fear FAU. I didn't think FAU, the term I use because they're the Owls, is I didn't think the Owls were going to go into East Lansing, Michigan and hoot, right? That's what an owl does. They hoot. I think that's what they do. Well, they didn't really do shit. Okay. So I was kind of right. The problem is Michigan State stunk. Now, they went up in this game 16-0, and they never scored after that. At halftime, they were winning 16-3. The quarterback for FAU, and you know what? I have another screen pulled up. I should probably get this guy's name right. Cam Fancher. At halftime, I believe, I went back and I watched this game. He was 2 for 4, 7 yards. They were down 16-3. In the second half of that game, Michigan did nothing. FAU scored a touchdown, and the final on the game was 16-10. Michigan State did not cover. Now, if you look at this game and you just look at the box score, you don't have to dig too hard to find why Michigan State didn't cover that game. 3 turnovers, I believe all of which were in the red zone. Fumble, interception, 1 interception. They were inside the 5-yard line. It was actually a great play by the FAU defender. It wasn't anything fluky, tip ball, nothing like that. He returned it 50 yards to midfield. So not only 3 turnovers in situations where Michigan State should have scored points, 12 penalties for 140 yards. You can't do that. You can't do that. So FAU greatly benefited from those. But again, I do have to give them some credit. They made plays when it counted. They made the plays to force these turnovers. But at the end of the day, I didn't come away thinking FAU was a very good football team. So I just kept that in the back of my mind, and I said, at some point, I'm probably going to fade this team. I also watched this quarterback, Cam Fancher, who I'm not overly familiar with. He ended the game passing 12 for 25, 116 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He made some really bad throws. But what he did do is made some pretty good plays with his feet. Again, I'm not familiar with this guy, so this is my first time getting eyes on him. I believe he's a transfer from somewhere. I don't know. 25 carries for 67 yards. Now, that's an average of 2.7 yards per carry, but I do believe sacks count in college. I could be wrong. He was elusive, in my opinion. He was fairly elusive. Now, I don't know if Michigan State has a pretty good defensive line or FAU just doesn't have a really good offensive line. We'll probably figure out in a few games. But I told myself the one thing that I do fear is Cam Fancher's ability to potentially make plays with his legs. He looks quick and he looks fast, but he's not a good passer. On defense, Michigan State was terrible throwing the ball. I'm sorry. Let me start over. We're talking about FAU's defense. So I was talking about their pass defense, but not to get it confused. Aiden Chiles, I believe, is the quarterback for Michigan State. I don't know how to properly pronounce his name. That's gonna be close enough. 10 for 24, 114 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Now running the ball, 37 rushes, 179 yards, 4.8 yards per carry. It's pretty good. One of the running backs from Michigan State had 9 carries, 101 yards, but it's kind of skewed. He had a 63-yard run. Another guy, and I guess this is their main guy, Nate Carter, 19 carries, 48 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. Not very good. So they did find some success with some guys, but their main running back didn't really find much. Nevertheless, 4.8 yards per carry. And the fact that FAU's defense just had to go against 37 rushing attempts in East Lansing against a Big Ten opponent is something that I wanted to keep in mind when I looked at FAU and I looked at who they're playing the following week, which here we are in week 2. And wouldn't you know, they're playing a team that loves to run the football. Army. Army still runs the triple option. Yes, I know some military schools don't anymore. I don't think Navy really runs it anymore. Army is in the AAC conference. This is their first game, their first opponent. It's on the road. It's in FAU, and I'll set the stage for you after that intro. FAU opened up -3.5. They the line moved up to 4, and it went back down to 3.5. So what that tells me is this. Money hit FAU early. Just today, got back to 3.5. So now it's back. A little money coming in on Army. I like Army. Spoiler alert. I lean Army already. And I'm going to tell you why I like Army. I give you a little bit of a reason and a background on why I am not sold on FAU despite covering and only losing by 6 against Michigan State. And also keep in mind, Michigan State, even though I do think they are a superior opponent, and obviously the odds makers do too. They were favored by 11.5 points. This is a team with a 4.5 win total, okay? But they're in the Big Ten. So FAU starts this season on the road in East Lansing, and then they come home and they have to play a military school who's in the AAC conference playing their first AAC conference opponent. I don't think that's a great scheduling spot. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Let me tell you, as a Notre Dame fan, I don't like playing these military schools. They're disciplined, they're smart, they're tough. They're not always the most talented and athletic, obviously. If you watch college football, you would know that. But now let's talk a little bit about Army. I watched Army. Army's head coach is a guy named Jeff Monken. He's been there 10 years. I believe he's liked and well-respected. They have a junior quarterback. His name is Bryson Daly. He's been with the team for a few years, obviously. He hasn't transferred or bounced around or anything like that. He ran the ball 17 times, and they played – I'm sorry, I didn't even tell you their opponent. They played Lehigh. Now, Lehigh's terrible. I believe they were an FCS team that won 2 games last year. Terrible. Army was favored by, I want to say, 34 points. I forget what the spread was. But that is somewhat relevant. They covered the spread, and they went over their team total. I forget what the spread was, though. Anyways, they won this game 42-7. Now, there's nothing impressive about beating Lehigh 42-7. But there are a couple takeaways, and I'm going to give you these takeaways. First off, let's start with the aggressiveness of the head coach, okay? Army opens up the game on offense, and they go 3 and out on their own 20, 25-yard line. Jeff Monken calls a fake punt. This fake punt is successful, and I believe the guy ran for about 30, 40 yards. Army goes on to score. Army had the ball 6 times. All 6 times they scored a touchdown. That's good. It's not good to go 3 and out on your first possession against Lehigh at home. But Jeff Monken in an interview said that's the whole reason he went for the fake punt. He didn't want his guys to open up their season with a 3 and out. I love that. I don't like that they were even in that situation, but I like the aggressiveness from Jeff Monken and the head coach. That's one note. The other note is this. Army was winning this game 35-7, under a minute left, backup quarterback in. They convert a 3rd down. They get it first and goal on the 5-yard line with 25 seconds left. Your average coach would probably just knee the ball, victory formation, run the clock. Not Army. No. Army lined up, ran a play, and scored a touchdown. Now, you could say that's tasteless and disrespectful. I wouldn't disagree with you. But as a sports bettor, I love it. Because that's a guy, we say this about James Franklin in Penn State a lot, that's a guy that wants to cover the spread. And I'm not saying he knows what the number is. He probably just wants to give his backup some stats and run some plays first game of the season. Who knows? But I like that. I like an aggressive coach, and I like a coach that wants to fucking cover. I'm going to tell you this. Army, like I said, is a run-first team, obviously. 56 rushing attempts, 375 yards. That is 6.7 yards per carry, and all their touchdowns came on the ground. They did pass the ball a few times, 3 for 6, 35 yards. They had another guy come in the backup, 2 for 2 for 22 yards. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The most important thing about Army is I think they can do what Michigan State did not do. What did I tell you if you paid attention that FAU benefited from? Do you remember? There were 2 things. They benefited from turnovers and they benefited from penalties. Well, let's see. How many turnovers did Army have against Lehigh in week 1? 0. How many penalties, you might ask, did Army have in week 1 against Lehigh? 1. Now, it's going to be on the road. The atmosphere is going to be much different. Probably going to be a few false starts, I'm sure. Maybe a little home cooking for FAU, maybe a holding here or there, obviously. But it ain't going to be 12 for 140. And I don't think it's going to be 3 turnovers. Maybe a fumble, but they're not going to throw it much. They're going to keep it on the ground. And I think this FAU defense, after just getting banged up, now they're fresh, it's week 1, but they're playing the big boys in the Big Ten. FAU's not familiar with that. Turn around and play an Army who's coming in here, and I think they want to make a fucking statement. That's what I think. Again, emphasis, think. I don't know if this is a lock. I don't know if it's a winner. But it's a bet I like, okay? Now, I will tell you, I'm always going to try to play devil's advocate. I will tell you, when I do look at this line, I think to myself, FAU minus 3.5, minus 4, could that be a little respect for FAU? Sure. Maybe. Maybe it's a little steep. Maybe you think it's closer to pick them. I don't know. I don't think FAU was expected to be a good team. They were 4-8 last year, and I really don't know much about Army. Last year, they started out poorly. They ended the year 6-6, and they beat Navy. That's a big statement. I think they even won their bowl game. Ultimately, I'm comfortable taking the 4 or the 3.5, whatever it is now. I still think Army probably wins this game. The only other thing I will tell you is Tom Herman did coach at Houston, and Houston was in the same conference as Navy. And he has seen the triple option before, so he is familiar with it. But he didn't really have good success with it. When he was coaching that Houston team, they beat Navy once and they lost to Navy once. Navy scored 31 points one time, and then they scored, I think, like 50. And he had Cam Ward as his quarterback. So he should have beaten Navy. Cam Ward's a really good quarterback. He doesn't have Cam Ward. He has Cam Fancher. I like the Black Knights. I think they're going to be aggressive. I think they're going to play tough. I think they're going to play. I think they're going to play discipline. They're going to play smart Army football. And I don't think that this FAU defense is ready to stop the triple option. Best bet, it's going to be a 2-unit play for me. I'm a $100 better. That's $200. You can bet whatever you are comfortable with if you want to tail this bet. But again, you're doing so at your discretion. Bet responsibly. Army plus 3.5. Wish I got the 4. I didn't get the 4. Plus 3.5. And Army's team total is 18.5. I like them to score 3 touchdowns. I don't necessarily like the over in the game. I'm not saying that. But I will tell you, Army's defense did look a little sketchy and a little susceptible. They've got 9 new starters. FAU might find the end zone a few times. Again, Cam Fancher's legs scares me. Army doesn't have a great pass rush or anything like that, and they're not super athletic on defense. But I do think they are going to be successful when they get the ball on offense. I think they're going to keep the FAU offense off the field. And I do think they're going to find at least some scoring opportunities, getting it close enough for field goals. So it's going to be a matter of FAU responding and keeping up. Like the points, like the Black Knights, best bet for college football week 2. Hope you enjoyed this video. Again, this is my first time really doing anything like this. I don't have a video producer. I don't really have, obviously, any graphics or anything like that that are going to come up on here. But if you did like it, I always appreciate feedback. If you didn't like it, I still appreciate feedback. Let me know what I can do different or better if you want these shorter. If you don't want these at all, I don't give a shit. Just let me know. And if you're watching these on YouTube, which you probably will because that's where I'm going to upload it, subscribe, like, share it, tell your friends. I don't know, do something. Just engage with it, all right? Helps us out greatly. All right, good luck on your bets. I hope you win more than you lose. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.